What is up, everyone? We are back with a Friday edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is July 2nd, and yeah, I'm excited for the long weekend. This was a tough week, a trying week in crypto. It really toyed with our emotions because the first half of the week actually looked kind of decent, even though it was on low volume. But sure enough, we kind of came crashing back down in the second half of the week. But we'll talk about that and some more stuff today. We're also going to talk about a new listing on Voyager, or a recent listing on Voyager, and sort of its utility and sort of the fundamentals behind it. So we'll talk about that. But before we get into it, CJ, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well. Looking forward to the weekend. Hopefully everybody's got some nice July 4th Independence Day plans with their family or loved ones. But also checking out traditional markets real quick. S&P, NASDAQ, all new all-time highs continually throughout the past couple days. Dow is getting back up there. Not quite there to new all-time highs, but it's working its way back. VIX down about 3% today. So, I mean, this is a risk-on environment. We're just not really seeing any capital flow into Bitcoin. It's kind of been one of those very low volume weeks here going into the holiday. I mean, I think last week we said it's typically Christmas, Thanksgiving, and July 4th are just very, very low volume. So I don't really have any intention of trading. Kind of just want to relax this weekend, do some research, kind of, plan the next move per se. The next heist.
CJLB in his cavern plotting the next heist, while most of you are out watching fireworks. But yeah, CJ, I agree with you. This weekend the market's looking pretty fragile in terms of technicals, and historically what we've seen on federal holidays, especially ones that are just American based, is we see the Asian market kind of trade heavily into the latter half of that weekend. So I'll be interested to see what happens on Sunday and Monday if we see the Asian market trying to step in and take advantage of, the Western market kind of sleeping during an otherwise time they'd be trading.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen certain times like this throughout history, like, a couple days prior to Thanksgiving or even 4th of July, where we've had those low volume instances lead to explosive moves in either direction. Where do you think this one has more likelihood of going?
Yeah, exactly.
Either way.
And that's the thing, right? Like, there is that potential for movement, but if you're gauging it in terms of likelihood of direction, it just feels like, based on what we're seeing technically, it does seem more likely that the volatility would be to the downside. So that, for me, that's the reason why I'm kind of just waiting this out. I think next week could provide some pretty interesting buying opportunities. But yeah, let's pull up the Bitcoin chart. Still below that 20-period smooth moving average, CJ. It's kind of, dictating where we're putting in these higher lows or lower highs, it seems like to me. We got this most recent one here at below about right around 36K. So, I would have been much more encouraged if we were to be able to get back up at that 40K level, but it looks like we put in a lower high. And it's interesting because we are approaching that level that's been pretty critical over the last couple of weeks at around 31K. And we're approaching with some pretty significant bearish momentum. And coming into a holiday weekend, where all those things we just mentioned are in play, I think that there is a chance that we break below this 31K level this weekend. But what are your thoughts, CJ?
It's going to be interesting to see. I agree with you that we are kind of, the moving average is telling us we're in a very bearish postured trend. You make a good point. With that 20 smooth moving average, it acted as consistent support when we were creating new higher lows during the course of the bull trend. Now we're creating lower highs that are being solely dictated by that 20 smooth moving average. And so the fact that we couldn't break that last time and continue to put in another lower high, it's just not that great, especially when you're coming up with low volume on a weekend. So that kind of just is my reasoning why I'm just going to kind of sit out on this weekend. I don't really have a Doge of the day today. If it pops, if Bitcoin goes up a couple $1,000s, I will be very pleasantly surprised. But I do not feel the need to take a risk on a shorter term trade like that today.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, CJ. There is the potential, I think, for, some very slight positive price action. The thing I'd be looking for to maybe kind of validate or invalidate my bearish perspective here is if we did get some positive price action and we broke above that smooth moving average and created a higher low instead of a lower high. I mean, a higher high here instead of a lower high, which we've been setting pretty consistently over the last week or so. I think that would be very encouraging and set us up nicely for some positive price action next week. But, like you said, I'm not going to take a risk on a small pop to get in on a particularly volatile weekend. But CJ, there's not too much going on that we didn't really mention yesterday in terms of, Bitcoin and ETH. Is there anything you're seeing in ETH that has changed over the last 24, 48 hours?
Not a whole lot. It's primarily just that it's just that smooth moving average that's really acting as resistance. I mean, even the assets that have popped this week, like StormX, have yet to get above that smooth moving average, even on that positive news following the Trailblazers announcement and that partnership, which is, congrats to Simon and the team. A lot of hard work over there at StormX. But due to that fact, I mean, we just haven't seen full on bullish momentum come into the markets. And I don't see it in the short term here. We have a very interesting question, though, by Bob in the chat, and he's asking about the Bitcoin mining difficulty adjustment. So there is a certain amount of hash power on the Bitcoin network represented by all various miners that come to essentially donate or put their hash power up onto the Bitcoin network. And so the difficulty in which it is to solve a block on the Bitcoin network adjusts every 2 weeks based on how many miners are on the network or not. And so based on our recent mining exodus from China, we had a ton of miners having to turn off their machines, being forced to essentially, and leave the country. And so what that did is that it created a massive drop in hash power on the Bitcoin network. But the difficulty adjustment in the Bitcoin network takes about 216,000 blocks. And since a block is solved every 10 minutes, that's about every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, that difficulty adjustment is set. And so now, since we've had such a decrease in the amount of hash power, we're actually going to have a very large drop in difficulty as well. It's going to be much easier to mine on the Bitcoin network during this 2-week period than it has ever before, because we had such a weird outlier event having to do with these miners being forced out of China. So I'm not seeing an immediate effect right now, but is there any observation you could draw from this difficulty adjustment and how it could impact price whatsoever?
Well, like you said, the timing with the whole migration from China thing makes this difficulty adjustment a particularly interesting one. We were talking about the Glassnode This Week report that came out earlier this week, and they talk a lot about mining revenue and that sort of discrepancy that we're seeing this year between the revenue that miners are seeing and also the difficulty of or the various difficulty adjustments we've been seeing so far this year. And one thing that is pretty interesting to note is that if we do get a difficulty adjustment of upwards of 25%, which is what people are expecting, the miners that have managed to stay online during this massive migration, miners that are already operating in the West or elsewhere in the world that aren't, affected by the sanctions laid down in China, they have been able to, or they will be able to be, following this difficulty adjustment, and actually have been over the last couple of days, incredibly profitable. So this is going to be a very interesting difficulty adjustment in the sense that, mining revenue is going to be very high because of the lack of miners. The only thing that could potentially change this is if we got a substantial correction that would really hurt the miners' revenue, or if lots of miners came back online this weekend following that migration from China. I don't think either is likely. A correction to 25K is, I think, the worst case scenario we'd see in terms of negative price action. And even then, I think these miners would likely not capitulate at that point because of where we're at currently and because of the current difficulty rate, the current revenue that they're seeing. I think it makes sense to maximize your revenue right now while the difficulty adjustment is looming, and then perhaps look to sell some of those mine coins back onto the market as we start to rise up in price. Historically, that's what we've seen. We see miners start to sell when the market shows strength. So I think that, the fact that miners are more profitable than ever could be indicative of the fact that, we could be approaching that next leg up.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point with these miners and which ones can be more dominant than others. And so it kind of wants me to kind of turn my attention to the blockchain related stocks, the miner stocks like Riot. I think this is going to be very good for Riot's short-term revenue because being a primarily US based corporation and mining company, like they likely were not affected by this mining ban to an extent as a larger Chinese-based Asian or a company like Bitmain essentially would have been affected much more since they have a larger presence in China. And so we'll see if that gives Riot or Mara or some of the other kind of more American miners a competitive advantage, at least in the short term when it comes to their revenue in this next 2 to 4 week period.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be something to look out for. But that's about all we got in terms of Bitcoin and ETH. I did, like we mentioned earlier in the show, want to talk about an asset that was recently listed on Voyager. A lot of people mentioned it. John picked it as his Doge of the day, I think, the day it was listed on Voyager. And that's Chiliz, CHZ. And this is a particularly interesting project. One thing that if you're in the crypto room pretty often, you'll know that we have some members of the Market Rebellion team that are pretty big soccer fans. And that's why Chiliz, I think, is an interesting project in terms of, because a lot of these projects are, just about store of value or potential utility in terms of finances. We see lots of banking sector coins, lending and borrowing, that sort of thing. This is completely different. This is about fan engagement. And so today there's some big Euros games happening. So I figured today would be a topical time to talk about this soccer related cryptocurrency that's recently been listed on Voyager. So let's take a look at the underlying chart real quick. Nothing too crazy. It's somewhat trending with the market. Like many other assets, CJ, chilling right below that 20-period smooth moving average, which is acting as resistance. But one thing that's super interesting about Chiliz, right? So it has the underlying CHZ pair. But then as you can see here, there's various other pairs that you can buy to support your club. And it's not just, you're not just throwing your money into these to support your club. You can also get voting power depending on how much of the asset you hold. So certain clubs use these votes in various ways, changing their crest, deciding what jerseys to go with for a various season. Even things like, season ticket allocation and things like that are decided by these voters on this network that hold this underlying asset. So some major clubs that have adopted it so far are Juventus, Barcelona, Galatasaray, a bunch of, English clubs, Man City, Man United. So I wanted to show, I'm a Man City fan. So here's the City Chiliz pair. It's actually performing very well. And I think that makes sense, right? A lot of these clubs, you can see them as an investment. City is worth billions of dollars now, but just 10 years ago, the club was purchased for less than $200 million. So there's tremendous opportunity to, if you support this club, if you believe in their players, their management, perhaps look to buy some of these tokens because it gives you, not just exposure to their growth, but also it gives you a bit of voting power in various things throughout the season. So really interesting project here. It's different than a lot of the other ones we've been seeing. And given that there's, some big Euros knockout matches on today, I figured today would be a topical day to talk about it.
Well, we appreciate that as well. I wish I could have added more to the soccer conversation. However, I do like Chiliz, the project, a lot, CHZ, and we'll likely be trading it probably next week, hopefully whenever we get volume back in the market and more market participants kind of return. But very nice, Monty. Thank you for sharing.
Of course, of course. But yeah, I think that's about all we got for today. So, as always, enjoy your weekend. It's a special weekend. Let us know in the chat if you're doing anything fun this weekend. I was telling people earlier, I'm going back to my hometown to watch the fireworks with my family, get to see my dog. He gets a little bit nervous around the fireworks, but I'll be there to comfort him, and I'm looking forward to that. So any plans for you this weekend, CJ? What are you up to?
No, I just I like watching the fireworks in the city. When I first I've lived in the city for a couple of years, and I didn't realize that people just light fireworks off wherever in the street, like regardless. It's not like a stationed thing. So if you look over the horizon, it looks like Chicago is like going to war with itself temporarily. But
Yeah, well, also you're on the 42nd, 43rd floor, so you can see basically all the fireworks all around. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, that's all we got for today. So if you want to come hang out in the crypto room with us, you can try it for just $1 for the first month. The link is right below me. It's markrebellion.com/try crypto. We have a pro charting service, a 24/7 community of traders from all around the world. We publish actionable trade insights with entries, exits, stop losses once a week. We also do daily news, and we've been adding a lot to our education curriculum this week. CJ was talking about some of the new courses he added, volume yesterday, and you're working on a new one, right? Momentum, and that's going to be coming soon.
yes, momentum indicators specifically. I'm focusing a lot on the MACD as well as the RSI. I love this strategy called the RSI is wrong. It's very interesting because I don't want to give too much away, but it is very counterintuitive to how maybe you were initially taught how the RSI is supposed to work. But very excited for that and much more because, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, I pulled it up behind us here. Our education curriculum is quickly becoming very extensive, and you can try out that just like everything else for just that $1 for the first month. You get full access to all our courses and everything. There's no upcharges or everything. It's all included. So definitely check that out if you're interested in learning about technical analysis or even fundamental things, like consensus mechanisms or NFTs or DeFi. We got courses on a lot of different topics if you're looking to learn about crypto. So check that out. And as always, thank you to Voyager for sponsoring our show here. They just released those July interest rates and also the Voyager token swap date coming in August. So exciting stuff going on over there. A lot of buzz around those new interest rates, 12% for DOT. Exciting stuff. So happy to be partnered with Voyager. Happy to see those moves they're making. And if you're looking for a place to begin trading crypto or a new place to trading crypto, Voyager is a great option. So go check them out. If you use code REBEL25 when you sign up, you get $25 in free crypto. But that's all we got. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you again on Tuesday. Have a great 4th of July weekend, and we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.